Harrison Wells stood frozen at the threshold of the cramped Harlem apartment, the rich scent of collard greens and cornbread wrapping around him like a memory he didn't recognize. What had started as a little girl's innocent invitation was now rapidly becoming something else, something dangerous. The eyes that turned toward him weren't hostile, but cautious, wary. This Thanksgiving dinner might unravel everything he'd spent decades building and hiding. Before we dive into what happens next, let us know where you're watching from in the comments. And if you believe one act of kindness can turn even the coldest heart around, hit that like button and subscribe. What would you do if the man at your table was secretly responsible for your family's eviction? Thanksgiving morning. 60-8-year-old Harrison Wells, billionaire real estate tycoon and public pariah to anyone outside his circle of influence, sat alone in his $50 million penthouse overlooking Central Park. He swirled a glass of 30-year-old scotch, more expensive than most people's rent, and stared into the hollow vastness of his sterile, high-gloss living room, decorated with silver and crystal centerpieces by a cleaning crew. The space looked like a magazine spread, not a home. No family photos, no laughter, no warmth. Just the echo of success and silence. 3 divorces had left him emotionally bankrupt. His only son, Alexander, hadn't spoken to him in 7 years, not since Harrison missed his college graduation to finalize a skyscraper deal in Tokyo. The last Christmas card Harrison sent had come back unopened, stamped refused in cold red ink on corporate letterhead. Even the people who owed their fortunes to him, his lawyers, investors, political puppets, avoided personal contact. They respected his business brilliance, feared his tenacity, and privately called him the Vulture. It wasn't just a nickname, it was his legacy. Harrison had made billions buying up distressed neighborhoods and flipping them into luxury enclaves, displacing thousands, mostly Black and Latino families. His latest project, Pinnacle Heights, was set to be his final masterpiece, a 20-acre luxury development in the heart of Harlem. To build it, 6 blocks of historic homes and local businesses would need to vanish. Community resistance had been strong, but Harrison had the city council in his pocket, and the permits were almost locked. He poured another drink, then did something he hadn't done in decades, left the safety of his world. No chauffeur, no Rolex, just Harrison in worn jeans, a gray hoodie, and scuffed shoes, trying to look anonymous. He took the subway uptown, stepping into a world he thought he knew, but DITN, single quotes T. Harlem. That the air was cold, but the streets radiated life. Gospel music spilled from open windows. Neighbors called greetings in English and Spanish. Children played in coats far too thin for the chill. At a small playground, Harrison paused. A girl, maybe 7, jumped double dutch with stunning precision, beads clicking in her braids as she chanted with her friends. Her joy was magnetic. Then she noticed him. "You look sad, mister," she said, skipping over without fear. "Are you lost?" Harrison blinked. "No, just walking." "On Thanksgiving?" she asked, tilting her head. "You don't got no family?" He opened his mouth to lie, but didn't know. "I don't." The girl's brow furrowed with concern. "That ain't right. Nobody should be alone today." She glanced back at her friends, then looked up at him again, smile returning. "Wanna have dinner with us? Mama always makes too much food. Grandma Pearl says our table's got room for anybody who needs a family." Harrison didn't know what to say later. He would realize it was the first human kindness he'd felt in years. His throat tightened. "That's very kind of you," he said. "What's your name?" "Zaria Johnson," she declared proudly. "I'm 7 3/4. "I'm Harrison," he said, then paused. "But you can call me Harry." "Nice to meet you, Mr. Harry," she grinned, revealing a missing front tooth. "We live over there." She pointed to a dilapidated brick building. His stomach turned. He recognized it instantly. It was one of his properties held through. shell companies, and deliberately neglected to push out tenants. He remembered the reports. Maintenance ignored, rent jacked up, inspectors scheduled during work hours. Vacancy rates trending upward. Zarya scribbled their apartment number on a torn sheet of paper and ran back to her game. Dinner's at 4. Don't be late. He stood there for a long time. He told himself he was just gathering intel, a chance to hear what the community thought and censored. But as he bought a bottle of expensive wine and returned to the building, each step felt less strategic and more like surrender. The West Side Heights Apartments. The name was shiny on paper, but the reality was decay. Cracked steps, broken lights, doors chained with padlocks instead of electronic locks. Inside, the hallway lighting flickered over stained carpet and water-damaged ceilings. Yet there were signs of resistance. A freshly painted door, potted plants, hand-sewn curtains, little acts of defiance. On the 4th floor, gospel music and laughter drifted down the hallway. A bulletin board was cluttered with church announcements, babysitting ads, and beneath it all a crumpled flyer. Fight the VOTURA community meeting to stop Montgomery Holdings. Save our homes. The logo was his. His shadow loomed here, even if his name didn't. He reached apartment 4G and hesitated. The wine bottle felt ridiculous in his hand, but before he could flee, the door opened. Mr. Harry, you came. Zarya beamed, grabbing his hand and pulling him inside. Mama, Grandma Pearl, he's here. The apartment was tiny but alive. The scent of roasted turkey, yams, cinnamon, and cornbread wrapped around him like a hug he didn't know he needed. Every surface gleamed. Everything had purpose. A woman in her 30s turned from the stove, eyes narrowing slightly. So, you're the gentleman Zarya invited, she said. I'm Harrison Wells, he replied, instinctively using his full name before realizing the slip. Thank you for having me. I'm Tiana Johnson, Zarya's mother. She accepted the wine with raised eyebrows at the label. Well, any friend of Zarya's is welcome, but her eyes stayed sharp, protective. A frail voice spoke from the corner. Zarya says you don't got nobody to eat with today. An older woman in a rocking chair watched him with quiet authority. Her eyes were deep, knowing. That's right, Harrison said softly. Then you're in the right place, she said, voice lined with age and steel. Nobody should be alone on Thanksgiving. She extended her hand. I'm Mama Pearl. More guests arrived. Neighbors, bearing pies, casserole dishes, Tupperware. Dion Johnson, Tiana's brother, recently home from a 5-year prison sentence for a non-violent drug offense. The Taylors from upstairs. Mrs. Rodriguez. Marcus Washington, a community organizer who taught at the local college and greeted everyone with firm handshakes and passionate eyes. No one recognized Harrison, not yet, not as that Harrison Wells, and yet, as they chatted about the broken elevator, ignored repairs, rising rents, he felt every word like a stone in his gut. The landlord's a ghost, Dion said, stabbing his fork into mashed potatoes. You only see the management company when they're posting eviction notices. Everyone murmured agreement, and Harrison sat quietly, swallowing guilt with every bite of sweet potato pie. Corporate ownership, Marcus said, voice taut with restrained anger. These investment firms buy buildings through shell companies, drain them dry, then flip or demolish for luxury condos. Harrison sipped his punch in silence, avoiding eye contact. The tension eased until Mama Pearl asked gently, So, Mr. Wells, what do you do for a living? Suddenly, all eyes were on him. For once, his wealth, power, and influence meant nothing. I'm a retired high school teacher, Harrison lied easily, taught economics for 30 years in Connecticut. The room relaxed, only Marcus raised an eyebrow. What brings you to Harlem on Thanksgiving? He pressed. Downsized after retirement. I live near Columbia now. Took a walk thinking about how quiet holidays become when family's gone. The partial truth earned some sympathetic nods. Well, you picked the right little girl to find you. Tiana smiled, resting a hand on Zarya's shoulder. Soon, everyone gathered around a mismatched dining table, full of soul food mac and cheese, greens, candied yams, cornbread stuffing. Harrison had never experienced a meal like it, full of warmth, laughter, and real connection. No one wanted anything from him except his presence. Zarya peppered him with innocent questions. In response, Harrison built a fake but oddly comforting life. A late wife, a son in Japan, quiet retirement. The fictional version felt fuller than the real one. Ever had soul food before, Mr. Harry? Zarya asked. Not like this, he admitted. Then you've been missing out your whole life, she declared, drawing laughter. Later, talk turned serious about housing and gentrification. Same company owns half the block now, Dion said. Montgomery Holdings, Marcus added. That billionaire hides behind LLCs while pushing out generations of families. Harrison froze. You've heard of him? Zarya asked. Maybe read something in the paper, he deflected. Marcus leaned forward. You know an awful lot about zoning for a high school teacher. Economics, Harrison replied quickly. Real estate's a hobby. The moment was broken when Zarya tugged him to see her drawings. One labeled Our Building Forever. Made his stomach sink. Have you ever been caught in a lie unraveling in real time? Comment 1 if you think Harrison should tell the truth now. Or 2 if he should wait. In the bathroom, Harrison locked the door and gripped the sink. The mirror reflected a man he barely recognized. A memory surfaced himself at 10 evicted days before Christmas. Back when he was Henry Michaels, not Harrison Montgomery. He'd promised himself 2 things: never be poor again, and never care about people who couldn't rise above their circumstances. Now, standing in the home of the very people he was displacing, those walls were starting to crack. Mr. Harry, Zarya called through the door. We got 3 kinds of pie. Back at the table, Dion shared his story. Got 5 years for marijuana. Now I can't even get hired at a fast food place. Marcus added, mass incarceration, followed by legal discrimination. That's how the system works. Harrison had always dismissed these stories as excuses, but now, hearing the real cost, seeing the people, he found himself asking gently, what kind of work did you do before? Computers, Dion said. I was good with tech. Harrison Wells never imagined one evening would unravel his carefully built detachment. He'd stopped by the West Side Heights apartments as a formality, but found himself drawn into the warmth and resilience of a community fighting to survive. Zarya proudly showed him a seashell collection and a crayon drawing of her dream home, one that unknowingly stood where Harrison planned to build a parking structure. Conversations around him revealed lives stitched together by mutual support. Neighbors who shared childcare, fought illness together, built community gardens in food deserts. Harrison realized he'd spent years convincing himself his developments improved neighborhoods while ignoring the lives they uprooted. When the heat failed that evening, a deliberate tactic his company used before demolitions, families huddled together, mobilizing to care for one another. Harrison quietly texted his assistant, ordering emergency repairs to avoid bad publicity, then deleted the message as the night wore on. Marcus shared grim news. The city had approved final demolition permits, scheduling it right after Christmas. Fear and anger rippled through the room. Residents spoke of unjust evictions and targeted lease violations, tactics Harrison's lawyers had drafted. He felt sick. You can't do this, he blurted, before realizing the hypocrisy. They can, Marcus replied flatly. The system's designed this way. Later, little Zarya showed Harrison a heritage project, pointing to their nearly century-old building, one Harrison's team had dismissed as unremarkable. The room quieted when Mama Pearl revealed she'd marched with Dr. King. Warning: urban renewal always meant Negro removal. Suddenly, a young man burst in. I just saw Montgomery, the developer, right here in the neighborhood. The description matched Harrison so closely, it made his skin crawl. As neighbors schemed to confront the elusive billionaire at an upcoming protest. Harrison's phone buzzed. Heat repairs were done. Cheers filled the apartment, though residents remained suspicious of management's sudden responsiveness. Before leaving, Harrison spoke with Dion, who dreamed of opening a tech center for kids, but faced endless obstacles due to his record and the looming demolition. Harrison found himself genuinely moved. The night ended with Zaria holding up a protest sign with a newspaper clipping of Harrison's face beneath the words "Stop the Vulture." "Mama says he's rich enough to buy 100 buildings," she said innocently. "So why does he want to take ours?" Harrison had no answer, just a growing awareness of the damage he'd done and the man he'd become. The community meeting took a sharp turn when a text confirmed a major discovery. Montgomery's company had secretly bought over 70% of the neighborhood using shell companies enough to push their development through regardless of remaining resistance. Even Harrison was caught off guard. His team had accelerated acquisitions behind his back. As suspicion in the room turned toward him, a winter storm warning lit up everyone's phones. Guests began to leave, but when Harrison moved to go, Mama Pearl insisted he stay. Zaria, the young girl, sealed it with innocent trust, asking him to see her snow globe collection, trapped by snow and secrets. Harrison found himself spending the night in the very apartment complex his company planned to demolish. The evening became unexpectedly intimate. Board games, music, laughter. Zaria made Harrison feel like family. He lost at spades, sampled sweet potato pie, and even adjusted a blanket around her when she fell asleep on the couch beside him. But tension remained. Marcus grilled him about his story. Dion opened up about dreams of a youth center plans destroyed when Harrison's company bought the building. Marcus later recounted how developers displaced his own family, causing his father's death. Their pain pierced Harrison's carefully built defenses. "Mama." Pearl pulled him aside before bed. "You carry a heavy burden," she said. "What kind of legacy do you plan to leave buildings with your name on them, or something that lives in people's hearts?" Her words haunted him into a restless sleep, where dreams of his own childhood eviction ended with him seeing his reflection in the face of the landlord. The next morning, Harrison awoke to sunlight and the cheerful chaos of a snow day. Tiana offered him coffee. Zaria asked if he'd help build snowmen, but reality struck hard. His phone was flooded with alerts, including a media warning reporters were asking about his whereabouts. A blurry photo had surfaced showing someone who looked like him in Harlem. Then Marcus walked in. "Reporters are in the neighborhood, showing your picture, asking questions." Harrison froze. He had come to Harlem to manipulate a community, but now, after one snowbound night, that same community might be the only thing capable of changing him. The only widely circulated photo of him appeared. He was cautious about maintaining his anonymity. He turned the laptop toward the room, showing the same image Zaria had shown Harrison yesterday. His own face stared back. Harrison's thoughts scrambled for an escape. Maybe he could excuse himself, check on his fake apartment, vanish before they realized. But fate had other plans. His buzzing phone slipped from the couch, landing with a thud. As he reached for it, his wallet dropped too, flipping open to reveal his driver's license and business card. Dion, retrieving them, froze. "Harrison, Montgomery," he read aloud, his tone shifting from puzzled to certain. "Co. Montgomery Holdings." The room fell into stunned silence as heads turned. "No," Piana whispered, eyes darting between the card, Harrison's face, and the photo Marcus still held. The match was clear. "You son of a bitch," Marcus growled, fury overtaking disbelief. "You came here to what? Spy? Get some kick out of seeing the people you're about to evict." Harrison stood, instinctively adopting his boardroom posture. "It's not what you think. I was just walking, and my daughter invited you." Tiana cut in, trembling with rage as she shielded Zarya. You sat at our table, ate our food, all while planning to destroy our home. Zarya peeked out, eyes filled with confusion. Mr. Harry, are you the bad man in the newspaper? Her innocent question hit harder than Tiana's fury or Marcus's rage. I'm a businessman, he said weakly. It's just a project, not personal. Dion stepped forward, fists clenched. That's what you call it, business. You target black and brown neighborhoods because you think we can't fight back. That's not true, Harrison objected, though he knew the data his team used targeted low-income areas with limited legal resistance. This is economics. Don't insult us, Marcus snapped. This is about race. Your company bulldozed 7 historically black neighborhoods. You never once targeted a white area. Tiana's voice cracked with emotion. My daughter saw someone lonely on Thanksgiving, and you were here taking notes, weren't you? Watching for weakness to speed up the demolition. No. Harrison tried to form a truth that wasn't a lie. Yes, that had been the plan. But something had changed. Something he couldn't explain, even to himself. Mama Pearl, quiet until now, spoke. I knew something was off the moment you walked in. Not because your white we've known plenty of good white folks, but because you were hiding behind your eyes. She stood, leaning on her cane. Tell me, did any of this touch you? Did you see us as human, or just as obstacles? The question hung in the air like a judgment. Harrison couldn't answer. His walls were crumbling. I need to leave, he said, grabbing his coat. My lawyers will. Dion stepped forward, but Tiana restrained him. That's all, Marcus asked. After all this, what do you want me to say? Harrison's voice rose. That I'll cancel a $300 million project over dinner. That's not how business works. Business. Tiana said softly, words like knives. This is where I raised my child, where my husband died. That's not a ledger entry. Harrison's defenses rose. I'm sorry, but neighborhoods change. That's progress. For who? Marcus snapped. People who can afford $3,000 rent, while lifelong residents get pushed to the edge. That's not progress. That's systemic racism in designer clothes. The words struck hard. I didn't create the system, Harrison mumbled. You just profit from it, Dion replied, and sleep fine at night. Harrison had no answer. The facade of Harrison Wells was gone, but so was the armor of Harrison Montgomery. Stripped, bare, he stood small in that Harlem apartment. Get out, Marcus growled. Before I forget myself, Zarya sobbed. But it's Thanksgiving. Nobody should be alone. He's got his money, Dion muttered. Harrison gathered his things in silence. There was no fixing this. As he turned toward the door, Mama Pearl spoke again. When you lay down in your fancy bed tonight, I want you to remember something. You broke a child's heart. A child who saw another lonely soul. Not a rich man, not a white man, just someone who needed kindness. That's what you're killing, not just homes, but that kind of seeing. Her words hit harder than anything. Harrison said nothing and stepped into the hallway. The door shut with finality, echoing like a verdict. Outside, the sunlight reflected off fresh snow, too bright after such darkness. He stood, unsure where to go and certain for the first time in years. He called his driver, ignoring the questions about why he'd been in Harlem. As he waited, a child raced past, laughing with a makeshift sled. The sound reminded him of Zarya, and he flinched. That dinner, what began as a passing impulse, had shattered the foundations of who he was. The sleek Bentley arrived, drawing glances. Harrison climbed in, the divider rising between him and the driver. He trembled not from cold, but from the upheaval. For the first time in decades, Harrison Montgomery doubted everything he'd built. Instead of fixating on his own losses, Harrison found his thoughts drifting to Dion's vision for a youth center, to Marcus's fierce defense of the neighborhood, to Tiana's tireless double shifts for her daughter, and to Sarah's quiet belief that people should help one another. But most of all, he kept hearing Mama Pearl's question echoing in his mind. What kind of legacy do you want to leave behind? As dawn broke over the city, the man once known as Henry Micklesby, before he became Harrison Montgomery, made a decision, one that would either redeem him or confirm the worst assumptions about him. Either way, he knew he could never go back to who he was before a 7-year-old girl asked him, "Do you want to have dinner with us?" on a cold Thanksgiving night. 3 weeks later, the gymnasium of a Harlem elementary school overflowed with community members. The topic: the controversial Pinnacle Heights development project. The air was thick with tension and resolve. Homemade signs denounced gentrification and displacement. Targeting Montgomery Holdings by name at the front, Marcus Washington spoke passionately into a microphone, laying out the community's legal strategy and plans for protest. "They've got money and political pull," he told the crowd, "but we've got something stronger, each other. We've got history, and we've got justice on our side." The room erupted in applause, but the mood shifted sharply as the gym doors opened and Harrison Montgomery walked in, not in a designer suit, but a simple sweater and slacks. This time, he wore no disguise, no distance. Just his name and the weight of what he had done. Silence rippled through the crowd as he walked toward the front. Marcus stopped mid-sentence, his expression hardening. "Well," he said tightly, "speak of the devil. Ladies and gentlemen, the man himself come to see what he's about to bulldoze." Harrison paused, scanning the room. He spotted T and little Zaria in the third row, Mama Pearl seated beside them. Zaria looked at him with hurt confusion. Gone was the cheerful curiosity she once had for Mr. Harry. He took the mic. "Thank you for letting me speak. I won't take long, and I understand why you don't trust anything I might say." He looked down at his prepared statement, then folded it and set it aside. 3 weeks ago, I thought I knew everything about this neighborhood. Zoning laws, real estate value, development, projections. But I didn't know the most important things. I didn't know the people. I didn't know the stories. I didn't know the soul of this place. A faint shift moved through the crowd, not forgiveness, but a softening, a pause to listen. "I came here today to tell you this. Montgomery Holdings is canceling the Pinnacle Heights project, effective immediately." The announcement sparked an uproarious belief, cautious joy, and outright suspicion surged through the room. Harrison raised his hands to quiet them. "There's more. My company currently owns 23 buildings in this neighborhood. We are transferring ownership of those properties to a newly established community land trust with permanent protections for affordable housing and a ban on future development." The shock in the room intensified. Marcus stepped forward, wary. "What's the catch, Montgomery? You're walking away from a $300 million project? That doesn't happen out of the kindness of your heart, especially since we're not convinced." "You've got one." The crowd murmured in agreement. "You're right to be skeptical," Harrison admitted. "This isn't entirely selfless. Yes, there will be tax incentives. Yes, we'll retain a non-voting advisory role on the Land Trust Board. And yes, this resolves a very public conflict." He hesitated before continuing, more quietly, "But that's not why I'm doing this." He stepped back, then returned to the mic. "There's something else. Before I became Harrison Montgomery, I was Henry Michaels, a kid from the South Bronx. My family was evicted 3 days before Christmas. I know what it means to lose your home, to watch your community disappear. Somewhere along the way, I convinced myself I was different from the people who did that to us, that I was building progress, not causing harm. I was wrong." He looked directly at Mama Pearl. "I spent 50 years running from that boy, from that pain. I built walls, wealth, power, status to never feel that helpless again, but it took a child's kindness to show me just how much I'd lost." The honesty quieted the room. Some faces softened. Others held on to their skepticism. I'm also committing $5 million to a community development fund, he continued. It will support infrastructure, small businesses, and youth programs including a tech center. The board managing the fund will be made up entirely of community residents. We'll provide support, but no control. He stepped away from the mic. Marcus returned to it immediately. We appreciate the announcement, but we won't celebrate until every one of those promises is legally binding. We've been lied to before. Harrison nodded. Agreed. My legal team is drafting the agreements now. Your lawyers will have full access. For the next 2 hours, the meeting continued. Residents demanded answers, accountability, and guarantees. Harrison answered every question directly. He didn't defend the past, and he didn't expect forgiveness. As the crowd thinned, Harrison found himself face to face with Tiana, Zarya, and Mama Pearl. Zarya looked up at him with solemn eyes. Why did you lie to us? The question pierced through every carefully crafted apology. He knelt to meet her gaze. Because I was afraid, he said simply. Afraid, she repeated, puzzled. Afraid to see myself the way others saw me. Afraid to feel things I didn't want to feel. Grown-ups build complicated walls to hide from simple truths. She nodded slowly. Like when I said I didn't care. Jasmine didn't invite me to her birthday party, but I really did. Exactly, Harrison said, smiling sadly. Except I've been pretending for 60 years. You only did it for an afternoon. Tiana stepped protectively beside her daughter. Words and promises are easy, Mr. Montgomery. We need action. I understand, he said. I don't expect your trust. That has to be earned if it ever can be. All I can do now is try. Mama. Pearl, who had remained silent, finally spoke. Long as you got breath, it's never too late to change, she said. Question, is this a real change, or just a moment of guilt, until the cameras go away? Harrison met her gaze evenly. I guess time will tell. She gave a slow nod. Indeed, it will. 1 year later, the neglected parking lot between 2 apartment buildings had become a thriving community garden. Raised vegetable beds, colorful play areas, and benches shaded by young trees filled the space. A modest plaque at the entrance. Read funded by the Montgomery Harlem community. Trust no logos. No branding. Harrison, dressed casually, and looking less like the man he'd once been, stood with Marcus. The Youth Tech Center has 35 regular students, Marcus reported, Dion already being approached about replicating the program elsewhere. That's incredible, Harrison said with quiet pride. Their relationship wasn't warm, but it had shifted professional, respectful, grounded in shared purpose rather than friendship. It was enough. 1 year ago, a little girl asked a simple question. Do you want to have dinner with us? It broke through years of isolation, wealth, and guilt and changed a man's life. Since then, Harrison Montgomery has stepped down as CEO, redirected his company toward restorative development, and helped launch a community land trust. He gave up his penthouse, traded profit for purpose, and began the long, imperfect journey of making amends. He didn't erase the harm of his past, and skepticism remains. But today, sitting in a garden he helped fund, surrounded by families he once displaced, Harrison isn't seeking forgiveness. He's showing up, quietly, consistently, as a man trying to do better. Across the garden, Zarya now, 8.5 fronts, over holding a tomato she grew herself. Will you come to my recital next week, Mr. Harry? She asks. I wouldn't miss it, he replies. Mama Pearl, sitting beside him, says, you look less haunted these days, planning to join us for Thanksgiving. If I'm welcome, he answers. You are, not as a savior, not as a villain, just a man choosing a different path. This story reminds us that real transformation begins with humility, accountability, and connection. That systemic harm can't be undone by good intentions alone. But change starts when we face the truth and stay committed. This Thanksgiving, think about who in your community might need an invitation. A small act of kindness can open the door to healing for them and for you. If this story moved you, like, share, and subscribe, and ask yourself, who could you invite to dinner?